الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان ودعا بدعوتهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So continuing from our last session where we discussed that children also have rights over their parents. That it's not just a one-sided thing. It's not just that the children must fulfill the rights of the parents, but the parents must also fulfill the rights of their children. And that's what we established from last session. Now this session is, what is the primary responsibility of the parents? Okay, so if I ask the parents, what is your main responsibility as a parent? When will you consider yourself as having fulfilled your responsibility? And now that you fulfill responsibility, become independent from you. So imagine your son or daughter is 3, 5, 10 or 15 years old, or 20 years old. What is at every stage, what is your main responsibility with your child? Now, if we ask the parents, some parents will say, we'll get many different responses. Some parents will say our responsibility is that we educate them so they're able to get a good job and live a comfortable life. Some will say, no, our responsibility is to maintain their health, make sure they're healthy, etc., etc. We'll have many different responses from different parents. But one thing we have to remember as Muslims, our first point of reference goes, we have to look at the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. What does the Quran say to us regarding what our responsibility is, and what does the Messenger ﷺ say to us what our responsibility is? So when we go back to the Quran, this is the main verse that we look at. Allah commands the parents. Allah commands the parents with this. So the verse is in Surah Al-Tahrim. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, that O you who believe, Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, save yourselves and your families from the fire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ, whose fuel is people and stones. عَلَيْهَا مَلَائِكَةٌ غِلَاظٌ شِدَادٌ, that appointed over it are stern and severe angels. لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ مَا أَمَرَهُم, that they do not disobey Allah in that which Allah has commanded them. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and they do that which they have been commanded. So the first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that it is the responsibility of the parents that their children have an Islamic upbringing and they strive to save them from the fire of Jahannam. Okay, now what does this verse literally mean? Qu anfusakum, that save yourselves and save your families. So now I'm going to go through some tafsirs to get an understanding of this verse. For example, in Tafsir Mujahid, that he states, he explains Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, that save yourselves and your families from the fire. He says that this means ittaqullaha azza wa jal, that you yourselves fear Allah, that you the parents fear Allah. وَأَوْصُوا أَهْلِيكُمْ بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ وَأَدِّبُوهُم, and teach your children to fear Allah. وَأَدِّبُوهُم, and teach them manners. It's mentioned in Tafsir al-Tabari that he says, what he means by Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, meaning Ya ayyuhalladhina saddaqullah wa rasulah, or sadaqullah wa rasulah, O you who believe, who are testified to Allah and His Messenger, who are truthful to Allah and His Messenger, Qu anfusakum, allimu ba'dakum ba'da, that teach yourselves from that which will save you from the fire Jahannam, wa tadfa'unaha anhu idha amila bihi min ta'atillah, wa'amalu bi ta'atillah, and adopt good deeds for Allah, talking to the parents, and adopt good deeds for yourself such that it will repel the fire of Jahannam from you by doing these good deeds. And then it's mentioned, it continues to say in Tafsir al-Tabari, وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا, and then your families from the fire Jahannam, meaning وَعَلِّمُوا أَهْلِيكُمْ مِنَ الْعَمَلِ بِطَاعَةِ اللَّهِ مَا يَقَوْنَ بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ مِنَ النَّارِ, I teach your children to obey Allah such that it saves them from the fire of Jahannam. Narrated from Ali radiallahu anhu that he said, what this verse means is عَلِّمُوهُمْ وَأَدِّبُوهُمْ. What does it mean by saving our children from the fire of Jahannam? He explained this as عَلِّمُوهُمْ, that you teach them the knowledge of deen, وَأَدِّبُوهُمْ, and you teach them those essential manners. Narrated again from, this time from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. So he says, what does this mean by save yourselves and your families? He says, اِعْمَلُوا بِطَاعَةِ اللَّهِ, So now he's addressing the parents. He says to the parents, "i'malu bi ta'atillah," that first and foremost, you yourselves act according to the commandments of Allah. وَاتَّقُوا مَعَاصِي اللَّهِ, and save yourself from the disobedience of Allah. This is step one. So for the parents. And secondly, وَمُرُوا أَهْلِيكُمْ بِالذِّكْرِ يُنْجِيكُمُ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ, and command your children and your family with the obedience of Allah, with the dhikr of Allah, with the remembrance of Allah, such that it saves them from the fire of Jahannam, meaning the commandments of Allah. Narrate from Qatada, again in Tafsir al-Tabri, that he said, قال يقيهم أن يأمرهم بطاعة الله, that the job of the parents is that he saves them by commanding them, he saves them from the fire of Jahannam by commanding them with the obedience of Allah. وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنْ مَعْصِيَتِهِ, and he forbids them, he prevents them from the disobedience, from Allah's disobedience. وَأَن يَقُومَ عَلَيْهِ بِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِهِ وَيُسَاعِدُهُمْ عَلَيْهِ. So the responsibility of the parents is that they are looking over the children, responsible that they are commanding them and help them towards the obedience of Allah. فَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ لِلَّهِ مَعَصِيَةً رَدَعْتَهُمْ عَنْهَا. And then the narration of Qatada continues, he says that when you see your children in the disobedience of Allah, رَدَعْتَهُمْ عَنْهَا, that you prevent them from this disobedience. وَزَّجَرْتُهُمْ عَنْهَا, and you rebuke them for this disobedience. So this is a primary responsibility from Qatada, from the Sahaba, that our primary responsibility is to, number one, for ourselves first of all, that we adopt the commandments of Allah, we ourselves stay away from the disobedience of Allah, and then we command the same for our children, meaning you do as I have done. Again narrated from Ali radiallahu anhu in Ahkam al-Quran. So I'm going to read this passage. It says, روي عن علي في قوله قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم قال علموا أنفسكم وأهليكم الخير. Narrated from Ali radiallahu anhu, that saving our families means to teach them the knowledge of Deen and to teach them that which is good. And it continues, وَقَالَ الْحَسَنُ تُعَلِّمُهُمْ وَتَأْمُرُهُم وَتَنْهَاهُم. Narrated from Hassan, so I'm guessing it's Hassan al-Basri, that he states the meaning of saving our families is تُعَلِّمُهُمْ وَتَأْمُرُهُم وَتَنْهَاهُم, that you teach them the knowledge of Deen, you command them to do good, i.e. the obedience of Allah. And it's not just partial obedience of Allah, full 100% obedience of Allah. Not that what we want, we're going to command them to do. And what, we're not bothered about, we're not going to tell them to do it. Full 100% obedience to the deen of Allah. وَتَنْهَاهُمْ, and that you prevent them from the disobedience of Allah. And not just those disobedience that we don't like, and the rest are okay. If you miss your Fajr Salah, I'm not going to say anything to you. Just make sure you don't drink alcohol. وَتَنْهَاهُمْ, you forbid them from 100% disobedience of Allah. قال Abu Bakr, وَهَذَا يَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّ عَلَيْنَا, because this is very important, this passage. وَهَذَا يَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّ عَلَيْنَا تَعْلِيمَ أَوْلَادِنَا. So this verse indicates and shows us that it is our responsibility as parents, تَعْلِيمَ أَوْلَادِنَا, to teach our children. So it's the parents' responsibility, no one else's, to teach our children. وَأَهْلِينَا الدِّينَ, and our family's religion. وَالْخَيْرَ, and that which is good. وَمَا لَا يُسْتَغْنَى عَنْهُ مِنَ الْآدَابِ, and that which is absolutely essential in terms of manners. وَهُوَ مِثْلُ قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, and this resembles or is similar to the verse of the Quran, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, where Allah commands us in another passage of the Quran that command your families to perform salah, وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, and be steadfast upon this. وَنَحْوَ قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, and likewise the verse of the Quran that's where in نحو قوله تعالى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, Allah said to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and warn your family members that are close to you. ويدل على أن للأقرب فالأقرب منا مزية في لزومنا تعليمهم وأمرهم بطاعة الله. So those that are the closest to us, we have the highest responsibility to them. And then the further relatives and the further relatives and the further relatives. So those that are immediate family members, those that are living in the same house, we have the highest responsibility to them. Now, this next quote from Ruh al-Bayan, the tafsir, is very important. So he starts off by saying, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ that, O you who believe, save yourselves. And he explains أمر من الوقاية بمعنى الحفظ والحماية والصيانة, that Allah is telling us to save ourselves, meaning to protect ourselves, to safeguard ourselves from the fire. And how? He says يعني بترك المعاصي وفعل الطاعات, by leaving out the disobedience, completely abandoning the disobedience of Allah and adopting the obedience of Allah. This is how we save ourselves. And then it says وأهليكم, now save your families as well. And how? بالنصح والتأديب والتعليم, by advice, by giving advice to our children, بالنصح والتأديب, by teaching them manners, والتعليم, by giving them education of deen. ودل, and then he says ودلت الآية على وجوب الأمر بالمعروف للأقرب فالأقرب. Then this verse shows us that it's wajib upon the parents to command our children towards good and forbid them from evil, i.e. from the disobedience of Allah. للأقرب فالأقرب, most importantly those that are the closest to us, and the next closest, the next closest. And then he mentioned the hadith, رحم الله رجلا قال يا أهله صلاتكم صيامكم وزكاتكم مسكينكم يتيمكم جيرانكم لعل الله يجمعكم معهم في الجنة. He says, may Allah have mercy on that person who says to his family, صلاتكم, that beware of your salah, and you make sure you pray your salah. Siyamakum, make sure you fast. Zakatakum, make sure you give your zakat. Miskinakum, make sure you look after the orphans, the poor. Yatimakum, make sure you look after the orphans. Jiranakum, make sure you look after your neighbors. I fear Allah regarding these people. لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يَجْمَعُكُمْ مَعَهُمْ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, may Allah unite all of you in Jannah. Now the last tafsir I'm going to quote, and this is a very important tafsir. And this is very important. They mentioned Tafsir al-Nasafi in Madarik al-Tanzil wa Haqaiq al-Tanwil. Says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum, i.e. save yourselves from the fire of Jahannam. And we've already learned what this means. بِتَرْكِ الْمَعَاسِ وَفِعْلِ الطَّاعَاتِ, by abandoning the disobedience of Allah and adopting the obedience of Allah. وَأَهْلِيكُمْ. Now this is the interesting point. This is very important. So first, the tafsir, it states, in Tafsir Nasafi, it says first you save yourself from the fire of Jahannam, and then it says your family. And now after this it mentions بِأَن تَأْخُذُوهُمْ بِمَا تَأْخُذُونَ بِهِ أَنفُسَكُمْ, that you tell them to do what you have made yourself do. You adopt taqwa, piety, obedience of Allah, and abstaining from the disobedience of Allah yourself, and then you say to your children that you do the same. Not that I miss my Fajr Salah, I miss my Isha Salah, I don't read the Quran, but oh child, you read the Quran, you pray your Fajr Salah, you pray your 5 times Salah, you read the Quran, you do the dhikr of Allah. So this tafsir is telling us that Allah commands us to save ourselves, and then He commands us to save our families. Meaning you do it yourself and your children will follow. And you teach your children to be like you, because you are the role models of your children. And then it says, طَهِرُوا أَنفُسَكُم مِّنْ عَنْ دَنَسِ مُحَبَّةِ الدُّنْيَا حَتَّى تَكُونَ أَهَالِيكُمْ صَالِحِينَ, that purify yourselves from the corruption, from the polluted love of this world. حَتَّى تَكُونَ أَهَالِيكُمْ صَالِحِينَ, until your family become salihin, righteous and pious. Meaning you purify yourselves, and that will extend over to your families. But if you yourselves as parents are not purified, and the heart is stained with the love of the world, love of materialism, love of disobedience of Allah, the love of your pleasures, then we will not be able to be role models for our families, and hence our families will not be purified and will not become righteous. And then the author states, فَإِذَا رَغِبْتُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا, then if you as parents are hastening towards the dunya, running towards the life of this world and the disobedience of Allah, فَهُمْ يَشْتَغِلُونَ بِهَا, then the children will also run and hasten towards the life of this world, towards fulfilling their desires and towards disobedience of Allah. And then he says, فَإِنَّ زِلَّةَ الْإِمَامِ زِلَّةُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And this gives an example. If the leader of a nation slips, then the believers also slip with him. So if the leader falls, then the nation behind him also falls as well. Likewise, we as parents are the leaders of our children. if we fall into the disobedience of Allah and the traps and desires of this world, the children will, of course, they follow us. So the way to raise righteous children is to be purified ourselves. And we're going to come on to this topic soon in a lot more detail. So now, having children, the purpose of having children is not to just produce a child to live in the next generation. So I've had my we've got children, we're going to feed them, we're going to clothe them, we're going to send them to school, and that's it. And then after I die, my child will be alive after me. That's not the purpose of having a child. But the purpose of having the child is to instill in the child righteous and pious attributes, and to raise children who will become obedient to Allah, who will be a source of reward for when we die. This is why the hadith, I'm going to finish with this last hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, it's narrated from Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا مات الإنسان انقطع عنه عمله إلا من ثلاثة. That the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that when a person dies, his good deeds also die and finish with him, except for three things. So those three things, their rewards continue even into our graves. إلا من صدقة جارية, that continuous sadaqah. Let's say you build a masjid, so every time a person uses the masjid, that reward will be coming to our graves. That's the first one. Second one is أو علم ينتفع به, or that knowledge which was taken benefit from. That Islamic knowledge that you've taught and now people are acting on it even after you've died. أو ولد صالح يدعو له, or a pious child who makes dua and prays for his parents. So these three things that will enable us for our rewards to carry on even after we passed away. But the condition أَوَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ, the Prophet ﷺ said, not just any child, not just a child that you've raised up so he just grows up in the next generation without any manners or piety or righteousness inside the child. The Prophet ﷺ saying أَوَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ, that pious child that makes dua for his parents, that child will be a source of reward for his parents. So our job as parents is to try and nurture righteous children, not just any child, righteous children, because only that righteous child will be a source of reward for me. And I remember I went to Janazah Salah once. I'm going to finish with this incident. So this incident made me realize, opened my eyes. I went to Janazah Salah, and we were in the cemetery where the Janazah Salah was taking place, and the son of the deceased, he was about 25, 30 years old. He approached me and he asked me, how do I pray Janazah Salah? He's worried. How do I pray Janazah Salah? I don't know how to pray. What do I say? So I took him to the side and I taught him step by step what he has to say, etc. And inshallah he understood most of it. Then after the Janazah Salah, after the person was being buried, and I was thinking to myself, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that then after everyone's walked away 40 yards I believe or so, then the angels of the grave will come to that person, question him, what is your who is your Lord, what is your religion, and then regarding the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then I thought to myself, this person has passed away and has left behind children, but the condition is that the children do not even know how to pray for their father. Their fathers passed away, they did not even know how to pray for their father. So all these 30, 40 years that the father was looking after his children, now after he passed away, now this is the time when he needs that rewards. But the condition is such that children don't even know how to pray for the father. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst those that understand our responsibility. Make us amongst those that will adopt the means of nurturing righteous children. Wa akhru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.